They say you can tell a lot about a person by the way they treat those who serve them. Late-night diners are full of stories most people never notice: tired eyes behind polite smiles, bruises hidden under sleeves, pain swallowed between orders of coffee and pie. For most, it's easier to pretend not to see, to tip, smile, and move on. But not for him. That night, Jasonstatham looked up from his booth and noticed something no one else dared to: the faint purple bruise blooming beneath the waitress's eye, and the silence that followed every time she walked past a certain table. No one spoke, but the look in his eyes said enough. Someone was about to regret pretending nothing was wrong. Before we continue, I just want to take a moment to thank every single one of you who's been part of this community. Your comments, your support, your time, it all means more than you know. Every like and every share helps us keep bringing you these stories that remind the world there's still kindness, courage, and people who do the right thing even when no one's watching. And if you're new here, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Because trust me, this one will stay with you. Late-night diners have a kind of silence that hums beneath the clatter of plates and the soft murmur of tired conversations. They're places where the world slows down, where people come not just for food, but to breathe, to escape, to think, to hide. It's where lonely souls meet under flickering lights, where coffee refills are both a courtesy and a quiet kindness. For Mia, it wasn't just a workplace, it was survival. The old neon sign out front buzzed faintly as she tied her apron for the night shift. Her hands trembled just a little, and when she reached up to fix her hair, her sleeve slipped, revealing the faint yellowing edge of a bruise along her wrist. She quickly pulled it back down. The diner manager had told her before, keep your personal life outside these walls. So she did, or at least she tried. It was past midnight, and the regulars were already in their usual spots. A couple of truckers by the window, a man in a suit typing furiously into his laptop, and near the back corner, a quiet man with a shaved head, plain clothes, and eyes that saw everything. Jasonstatham had been there before. He didn't say much. He never did. He came in a few times a week, ordered black coffee and a sandwich, sat alone, and watched the room like someone who understood silence better than most. Tonight felt different, though. As Mia walked past his table, balancing a tray of orders, Jason noticed her face when the kitchen light flickered just right. A shadow, no, not a shadow. A bruise, faint but fresh, creeping along her cheekbone and curling under the corner of her eye. She smiled when she saw him looking, trying to make it seem normal, like everything was fine. But her voice cracked just a little when she said, "Can I get you a refill, sir?" He nodded slowly, "Yeah, please." When she turned to walk away, Jason caught the smallest glimpse of fear in her movement, not fear of him, but of something waiting for her. At the far end of the diner, two men in leather jackets laughed too loud, the kind of laugh that didn't belong to humor but to arrogance. One of them, tall and broad with slick-back hair, kept glancing at Mia every few seconds. Jason noticed how she stiffened when she approached their table. "Hey, sweetheart," one of them said, tapping his spoon against the table. "You missed my order again. Maybe if you smiled more, you'd remember." His friend chuckled, taking a slow sip of coffee. "Yeah, smile for us, honey." Mia swallowed hard. "I'm sorry, sir, I'll check on your order." As she turned, the first man reached out, his fingers brushing against her arm. Too familiar, too long, too much. Jason's eyes narrowed. But he didn't move, not yet. He had learned long ago that the worst kind of cruelty hides behind laughter. That real monsters don't roar, they whisper. Mia hurried to the kitchen, her heart pounding. She leaned against the counter, pretending to write something on her notepad, but her breath trembled. She thought about quitting, she thought about it every night, but quitting meant bills unpaid, rent due, and the sick mother waiting for her at home. Jason took another sip of his coffee, his gaze following her reflection in the chrome napkin holder. Something in him stirred, not anger, but recognition. He'd seen that same look before. The quiet strength of someone too tired to fight but too proud to break. When Mia came back, she carried their plates with careful hands. She placed them down, kept her head low, and said softly, "Enjoy your meal." But the first man smirked and said, "You could stay and make it sweeter." His friend laughed again. "Maybe we leave her a tip she won't forget." A few nearby customers shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. No one ever did, because no one wanted trouble. Jason watched the scene unfold, the muscles in his jaw tightening. He could almost hear the ticking in his head, that familiar countdown before he acted, but something stopped him. Mia glanced toward him for just a second, a silent plea, but also a warning. Don't, please. He understood. Sometimes stepping in too early only made things worse for the person already suffering. So he waited. Hours passed and the crowd thinned. The men finally paid, leaving a few crumpled bills on the counter and a cruel comment whispered under their breath. Mia didn't respond. She simply wiped their table once they were gone and tried to steady her hands. Jason stood up. He walked over slowly, the wooden floor creaking beneath his boots. "You all right?" he asked quietly. Mia hesitated, her lips parted but the words wouldn't come. "Yeah, just tired," she managed, forcing a smile. Jason looked at her for a long moment, that same unreadable expression he always carried. Then he reached into his jacket, pulled out a small card and slid it across the counter. "If you ever need help," he said, "call that number." She frowned. "Are you?" He shook his head. "Just someone who doesn't like bullies." She nodded slowly, tucking the card into her apron pocket. By the time she looked up again, he was gone. The next night came faster than she expected. She hadn't called the number, of course. She told herself it wasn't that bad, that it would blow over, that they wouldn't come back. But they did. This time they weren't laughing. The diner was quieter, fewer customers, and the same two men walked in with the confidence of people who thought they owned the world. One of them had a bruise on his knuckle, a fresh one. Mia noticed it when he reached for the menu, smirking at her like they shared a secret. "Hey there," he said, "miss us?" She froze. Jason wasn't there tonight. She looked toward the corner booth, empty. For some reason, that made her heart sink. The taller man leaned forward. "We came back for dessert," he said, his voice low. "You remember what we wanted, right?" She took a step back. "Please just order or leave." He grinned, standing up. "You think you can tell me what to do?" A few heads turned. The manager, a man in his 50s, started walking over, but before he could reach them, the man grabbed Mia's wrist. Hard. She yelped softly, not loud enough for the world to hear, but loud enough for Jasonstatham, who had just stepped through the door. He was back. And the moment his eyes found that man's hand on her wrist, the air shifted. The diner went quiet, like even the buzzing lights held their breath. Jason walked forward, slow and steady. His boots echoed against the floor. People turned, whispering his name, though most didn't believe it could really be him. The man didn't let go. "What, you got a problem, old man?" he sneered. Jason didn't answer. He just kept walking 1, 2, 3 steps until he stood right beside them. His presence filled the space, calm but dangerous. "Let her go," he said softly. The man laughed. "Or what?" Jason's gaze didn't waver. "You don't want to know what?" Something in his tone, the low, steady conviction, made the man hesitate. But pride can make fools out of people. He squeezed harder, trying to prove a point. Jason moved before anyone could blink. One motion, smooth, controlled. He twisted the man's arm, guided it downward, and placed him against the counter with just enough pressure to remind him of consequences. The other man jumped up, shouting, but froze when Jason turned his head just slightly and said, "Sit down." And he did. The diner was dead silent. The sound of a coffee cup clinking against a saucer felt like thunder in the quiet. Jason leaned closer to the man pinned against the counter and said quietly, "You touch her again, and you'll remember this night every time you look in a mirror." He let him go. The men stumbled out, mumbling curses under their breath but not daring to look back. Mia stood frozen, her breath shallow. Jason straightened, looked at her once more, and said, "You don't have to take it anymore. You deserve better than this." She wanted to thank him, to say something, anything, but the lump in her throat wouldn't let her. Jason walked out without another word, disappearing into the night, leaving behind only the faint sound of the bell above the diner door. And though he didn't come back for weeks after that, the men never did either. What Mia didn't know, what no one saw, was that Jason hadn't gone far. He'd spoken to the diner manager the next morning, arranged for a quiet donation to help with her mother's medical bills, and made sure those two men got a visit from some people who specialized in changing behavior, the legal kind. Because sometimes, doing the right thing isn't about making a scene. It's about making sure no one ever has to hide their pain again. The next morning, sunlight streamed weakly through the diner windows, catching the dust in the air like tiny pieces of gold. The place was quiet again, but something in the atmosphere had changed. Mia moved slower than usual, still shaken by the night before. Her body was at work, but her mind replayed everything in fragments. The voices, the grip on her wrist, and the calm, dangerous tone Jason had used when he said, "Let her go." She didn't even know his name, not really. She just knew that for the first time in a long time, someone had stepped in without wanting anything in return. Her coworker Gina leaned against the counter. "You okay, hun?" Mia nodded. "Yeah, I think so." "You sure of those guys?" "They won't be back," she said, her voice low but firm. Gina frowned. "You sound pretty certain." Mia just smiled faintly, remembering the look on Jason's face, that cold, focused kind of certainty that didn't need words. "Yeah," she whispered. "I am." Later that afternoon, as the last of the lunch rush cleared out, the doorbell above the entrance chimed softly. Mia looked up, half expecting to see him, but it was Jason. It was a delivery guy holding a small brown box. Delivery for a Mia Roberts. "That's me," she said, confused. He handed her the box and left without another word. Inside was a note, no name, no return address, just a short message written in tidy block letters. "For your mom, take care of her." And beneath the note, a sealed envelope. She opened it carefully and froze. Inside was enough cash to cover her mother's medication for months. Mia sat down hard on one of the stools, her eyes welling with tears. She didn't need to guess who it was from. For years, life had taught her not to expect kindness. But now, sitting in that empty diner, she realized something: kindness wasn't always loud. Sometimes it walked in quietly, finished its coffee, and changed your whole world without saying a word. Across town, Jason parked his car near an old industrial lot. He stepped out, his expression calm but his eyes sharp. A black SUV sat idling nearby, the same one that had followed those two men out of the diner last night. The passenger window rolled down. A man in a tailored suit looked up at him. "You weren't kidding," the man said. "You really can't stand watching someone get pushed around." Jason gave a small shrug. "Old habits." "You want us to handle it?" He shook his head. "Already did. Just make sure they understand the message quietly." The man nodded. "Consider it done." Jason didn't need details. He trusted the right people to make sure the wrong ones didn't make the same mistake twice. As he walked back to his car, he thought about Mia. He'd seen her kind before, people carrying the weight of the world and smiling anyway. The kind that reminds you the world still had light, even if it flickered. That evening, Mia went home early for once. Her mother was asleep in the small living room, the oxygen machine humming softly beside her. Mia sat by her side, holding her hand. "Mom," she whispered, "someone helped us, I don't even know why." Her mother stirred slightly, smiling in her sleep. Mia looked down at the folded note in her pocket. She'd read it a dozen times already. There was something so simple about it. No pity, no promises, just a quiet gesture from someone who saw her struggle and decided to do something. For the first time in months, she felt safe. Days passed and the diner returned to normal, at least on the surface. But people noticed a difference. Mia walked with her shoulders a little straighter. The regulars were kinder, tipping a little extra, asking how she was. Word had spread about what happened, not the full story, but enough to change the way people looked at her. And one night when the doorbell chimed again, she turned and there he was. Jason stood in the doorway, same quiet demeanor, same steady presence. She froze for a second before smiling. "You came back." He nodded. "You still serve coffee here, don't you?" She laughed softly, shaking her head. "Yeah, always." She poured him a cup, sliding it across the counter. "I never got to thank you," she said. "You don't have to." "I do," she insisted. "Not just for what you did that night, but for what came after." He looked up at her, confused for a moment, then understood. "I didn't do it for thanks. he said quietly. Sometimes you just see something wrong and fix it before it breaks someone worse. She smiled at that, a small, genuine smile that reached her eyes. You fixed more than you think. Jason nodded once, took a sip of his coffee and said, good. They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that doesn't need words, the kind that feels like peace. When Jason left that night, Mia didn't stop him. She knew he wasn't the kind of man who stayed in one place too long, but she also knew she'd never forget him, the stranger who saw her pain and chose to act when everyone else looked away. Weeks later, the diner got a new waitress. Young, nervous, unsure of herself, just like Mia had been once. On her first night, as she fumbled with an order slip, Mia gently touched her shoulder and said, "Hey, it's okay. Take your time." The girl smiled weakly. "Thanks, I'm just scared I'll mess up." Mia smiled softly. "Don't worry, you'll get through it." And in that moment she realized something else. The kindness Jason had shown her hadn't ended that night. It had started something new. Because when someone stands up for you, really stands up for you, it teaches you how to stand up for others too. A few weeks after that, Mia received another small envelope in the mail. No name, no return address, just like before. Inside was a note. "Keep helping people. The world needs more like you." She smiled, pressing the note to her chest. Outside the diner, the neon sign flickered again, but this time it didn't feel tired. It felt alive, a quiet pulse in the night, a reminder that even the smallest act of courage can change everything. And somewhere out there, Jasonstatham sat in another diner, another night, another story waiting to unfold, because that's what he did. He didn't seek recognition or applause. He simply watched, waited, and stepped in when the world needed reminding that decency still existed.